Sorry, was my mic on after I finished the other call? It's Rodrigo.
No, your mic is on now, but
sorry, was my mic
before?
on? No,
but
after I finished the other
could you
call?
turn it off? Like we're about to go live now.
Okay, no worries. It's Rodrigo.
No, your mic is on now, but
sorry, was my mic
before?
on? No,
but
after I finished the
could
other
you
call?
turn it off? Like we're about to go live now.
Okay, no worries. It's Rodrigo.
Right. I would like to wish
was my mic
good evening
on?
to
No, after
all
I
of
finished-
our panelists and, of course, to our audience. Since this is a public event, perhaps not everyone might know about Vault, so let me begin with a brief introduction. I am Jan Beselin, a member of Vault's communication team. Vault itself is young and the first pan-European political party. This means that we are represented in every member state of the European Union. We were founded in 2017 in the wake of Brexit, the Trump election, and growing political extremes and populism. As nations seem to drift apart, we are trying to achieve the opposite and advocate for the same political principles all over Europe. In particular, we believe that Europe is only able to overcome the current problems as one continent where the same goals are pursued apart from political ideologies. The situation which is currently unfolding in Belarus is of greatest importance to us since Belarus is a vital part of Europe and a direct neighbor of the European Union. While we advocate for democracy, freedom, and human rights, our very neighbors in Belarus are still unable to enjoy these values in the last European dictatorship, as Belarus is sometimes referred to. The fact that the Belarusian people are still peacefully and bravely protesting against the current regime, even 6 weeks after the elections, absolutely deserves our appreciation and our support. And the goal of today's panel is to do exactly that by giving a voice to the people that are most directly affected by the recent events in Belarus. Further, we hope to raise more awareness and to inform about the danger and hardships the protesters are currently facing. Therefore, we invited 6 panelists to share their stories and their expertise with us tonight. The protesters unfortunately, we therefore seem to be short one panelist, which is their stories and their expertise with us tonight. Who I have unfortunately not heard from since Wednesday, so I really hope that he is all right, but as it seems he is unable to join us tonight for reasons I don't know. So at first I would like to ask all of our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us about their recent experiences in connection to the events we're seeing right now in Belarus. And afterwards, the audience will have the chance to direct questions to the panelists, either through the live chat on YouTube and Facebook or directly in the Zoom call if you have pre-registered. And further, we already have also received some questions in advance from the people that pre-registered, which we are going to raise as well. Overall, we are planning for this event to last for about 90 minutes. Perhaps it might be a little bit more than that, but we're going to see about this. So first of all, I would like to ask Alla to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Vault Europa for your invitation to this web talk. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Alla Leukovets. I was born in Belarus, and I'm currently based in Minsk. I have an interdisciplinary background. I hold a BA in law, MA in human rights and international relations, and I have recently finished my PhD in political science in Germany. I'm currently affiliated with the Center for Strategic and Foreign Policy Studies in Minsk, and my research interests focus on domestic and foreign policy of Belarus. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share my insights about the ongoing post-elections protests in Belarus. So what is currently happening here is truly unprecedented, and it can be called the awakening of the Belarusian nation. This is the first time since 1994 that Belarusians have taken to the streets in such massive numbers to challenge the results of the fraudulent elections. None of the previous elections were characterized by such significant mobilization of people with such strong anti-Lukashenko sentiments. But it is not only the enormous number of people who came into the streets to challenge the results of elections, it's also the comprehensive nature of these protests. Since the 9th of August, basically the protests have grown into a truly national movement that includes both capital city, provinces and rural areas, both intellectuals and workers, youth and elderly people. So what are the specific characteristics of these elections and why things have clearly gone wrong for Lukashenko now? I see several factors or triggers which played a role in this outcome. And the first of these triggers is a pandemic, or to say more precisely, how it was handled by the authorities. You might have heard about the ridiculous approach which Lukashenko and his entourage have adopted to fight coronavirus. They called it a corona psychosis. They said it's not dangerous at all. They recommended saunas, working in the fields, drinking vodka to fight the illness. So naturally, this created the anxiety and anger of the population, especially when the death toll started to rise. In addition to pandemic, the economic situation in the country has been worsening for some time, which is due to the cringing benefits from Russia. And the combination of these first two factors have contributed basically to increasing this social dissatisfaction with Lukashenko. Furthermore, I would like to point out the role of social media and the process of digitalization in general, which have been underestimated by the regime, but which have played a decisive role in politicizing people. They also allowed to appear the new leaders, the new faces to appear in the political arena in Belarus. In addition, IT sector, which, as you might know, is quite developed in Belarus, has contributed to delegitimizing the official results of the elections. Several of our IT specialists have developed an application, which is named Voice, for alternative counting of votes. And it provided a proof that Lukashenko could not win in these elections fair and square. So a combination of all these factors contributed to increasing social discontent with the ruling regime and made people basically to take to the streets. If I had to give a quick overview of the protest movement of Belarus, I would divide it into several main stages. The first phase can be called the phase of violent repressions. This happened starting from the day of the elections and lasted for a few days after. And during this phase, the government used the riot police force and brutally crushed down the protests. The second phase was a phase of temporary de-escalation. It started with the peaceful protest by women who came out in chains of solidarity, and they led to the withdrawal of the police from the streets. During this phase, peaceful demonstrations, I think, reached its peak. There was a euphoria from seeming victory, and this phase was also characterized by the beginning of the strikes movement in Belarus. The third phase can be termed the phase of retaliation, and this is the phase which we are currently experiencing. This phase started with the government using slightly altered tactics. They basically borrowed these tactics from the political opposition. The government started organizing pro-government rallies. They set up Telegram channels to increase their own popularity, but these methods did not really work. And now the regime returned to the repressive approach. This is something which we unfortunately witnessed yesterday when a lot of women were brutally detained during their march. And what happened today? Over 200 people have already been arrested as the result of today's March of Heroes. So what could be the next phase and what are the possible scenarios of how the situation can develop? So this third phase of retaliation can end either with a phase of dialogue with political opposition, which doesn't seem to be realistic at the moment. Hypothetically, we could also envisage the decrease of the protests, and come to the scenario when they will just die out. But at the moment, I don't see any signs of apathy among protesters. People understand that protests are not a sprint, but it's a rather marathon, and changes do not come over the night. So at the moment, I see still quite a lot of determination to continue with demonstrations. A new phase could come also with the constitutional reforms and new elections, but I think we will be able to learn about this scenario more already next week after Lukashenko has his meeting with Putin. This is going to happen on Monday. And I think it's important for our audience to understand that although Belarusian elections are not about geopolitical change, Russia plays a very important role in their outcome. So all eyes are on Russia now, and I'll be happy to elaborate on the role of our neighbor during these elections during the Q&A session. And on this note, I would like to finish this introductory statement. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Alla. It is great having you tonight, and thank you for this brief analysis already. So, Svetlana, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Svetlana, you're mute.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing it to my attention. So, hello everyone, and my name is Svetlana Surikova. I was born and raised in Minsk. I've been living abroad, mostly in the United States and London for the last 20 years. And coincidentally, I also have a degree in international relations from Belarus State University. And then I moved, I spent some time actually working for Belarusian government in South Africa. But then I moved to the business side, and I've been working in management consulting for many years. And I happened to be in Minsk because due to coronavirus, I was free to work from whenever location at home or somewhere else. I came to Minsk at the beginning of July for 2 months, and I never expected anything like that to happen. Now you have to understand, I've been protesting against Lukashenko since he was elected as a president back in 1994. And that was even before I joined university, even before I was a student. I never supported the current government, and my decision to go and live abroad was partly, I would say maybe 1/3 of it was driven by the situation in the country. And basically, I never expected such a movement, such a large protest to happen. I was deeply impressed and moved by what I saw in Minsk, and I took active participation in whenever I could, and I volunteered with helping victims of oppression one weekend, and basically I wish like I could do more. I'm looking for ways to do more. I'm back in London now because my life is here, and I wish I were still in Minsk because what's going on there is completely incredible. And you have to know Belarus from within to understand how unusual and how changing, how evolving this nation formation is. So as I said, and I would like to underline that, like it's incredible to see that it's actually happening, because it was very hard to imagine even 2 months ago that something like this was possible. And this awakening of the nation is something that will be recorded in the history books going forward. It's a very important moment. And moreover, I think it's the last country in Europe to go through this transition process. So it's truly historical.
Right. Thank you, Svetlana, as well for your introduction. So, Nick, would you like to go next?
Sure. I hope you guys can hear me. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm currently based in Belarus. My background is business/IT. I run a software company which is based in Belarus and US. I spent probably 7 or 8 years abroad. In Austria, living in Austria and in Germany, and now, not now, but like around 3 years ago, I came back to Belarus to basically build the company here. So also, I was an accredited independent observer during the pre-election and during the main election day. I've been treated in a very funny way, I would say, by the official observers. I've seen a lot of how to say, a lot of fraud during the elections, and then I've been taking part in the protests during the initial stage, I would say, and then whenever I can, I go out and try to support the cause. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it from my side.
Actually, may I ask, right to that? So you said you were an independent election observer, and that you witnessed fraud during the elections. Like, how were you treated? Like, how did you observe the elections? Like, and how blunt or in what form did you witness?
Well, well, first of all, the voter turnout on my election poll was around 103%, which is a bit too much in my opinion. Second, I mean, when I just came there, like they don't treat you. I mean, we had this like special act, or whatever you call it in English, which says that due to coronavirus, there should not be allowed more than 3 observers in the room on the polling station, and those 3 observers were of course already provided by the government by the time I came up and got my accreditation. So basically, I could not even be on the polling station, so I had to stay at the door. I had to like sort of like poke and try to see like what people were doing there, trying to see if everything was going according to the law. And then basically during the election day, they even kicked me out from the door because out of a sudden they wanted to do an exhibition next to the door, like an art exhibition or something. So they had to push me basically like it was like 10 meters away from the door of the polling station. So it was like really hard for me, and then also for my partner, which then joined, to count the turnout. So yeah, this was it was not the most pleasant experience in my life, because there was like no respect whatsoever, I would say. Like they treated us as an enemy, and it's like they had their own mission and we had our own mission, and they were like completely opposite goals of those missions.
All right, thank you very much for your introduction then. How about Hannah, would you like to go next?
Sure, hope you can hear me. Hello, and thank you very much for having us today here. Thank you, Walt, for providing such a place where we can discuss the Belarusian events. It is very important for us that Europe puts its attention to Belarus. My name is Hannah Baraban. I am a journalist. I also hold a bachelor degree in international law and master's degree in international security of the University of Barcelona. During more than 10 years, I was living in Minsk, and I was working both in a state journalism and in independent journalism. I was working in both previous presidential campaigns in 2010, 2015. And after the last one, I relocated to Spain. So that now in Spain here, I tried to build my career. I was working in Dow Jones. However, in the end of July, I decided to let it go, and I went to Belarus to oversee the elections, because it is a private and professional matter for me, because it is extremely important for my family who is living there. And I can tell you that during 2010 protests, I was in this protest. I was almost detained. This time, I almost detained 3 times. I was lucky enough to not to get to the jail, and so I tried to sorry. So I tried to comment on the situation and of what is seen to different media, like with you now, for example. And I guess that's pretty much it. But also I wanted to highlight, before we will start our discussion, that in Belarus, I guess most of the viewers are Europeans, and in Belarus we have a very different political system and notions of political and different notions. For example, during these 26 years, the president built this strong, strict vertical of power, which is above, and he's above legislative, executive, and judicial branches of power. So it makes him protected by them. Then now we see that security forces, security work forces are backing him very much. And I wanted to say that as I lived in Europe for 4 years, and I lived in Belarus for even more years, and I can say that the opposition, the meaning of the opposition in Belarus is in traditional meaning, like for Europeans, it does not exist. It is rather the protest movement, as I would call it right now, because during the 26 years, what happened, it was the gradual and purposeful destruction of the opposition. The fact that the opposition leaders, after the elections, were imprisoned, sometimes for 5 to 7 years, it is well known. For example, in 2010 elections, 7 candidates out of 10 were imprisoned, and one of them was held in prison for 5 years. Then there is no opposition representations in local authorities. In the parliament, in 2016 elections, only 2 out of 110 candidates were represented opposition. And then in 2019, 0 candidates. Now we have our parliament without any opposition candidates. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that this democratic basis that European countries do have, the overturn of the power, the presence of the opposition in the different levels, and rule of law, respect to human rights. If we talk about Belarus, these things should be understood differently. So I guess that's for me pretty much it. But I will be happy to comment on this later also.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction. And Claudio, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I'm Claudio Locatelli, an independent journalist. I hope you can hear me properly. Give me a feedback. All right. I was in Minsk in Belarus during the period of the election for a personal commitment. But obviously, as a journalist, I was keeping an eye on the situation. And I was expecting quite normal situation like in other reality, in other context election. But that night was a turning point, the 9th of August, because I was recording the situation. I was trying to analyze what was happening. Since the morning, you have to understand that Minsk was completely closed in a checkpoint control area. So there are many military jeep were checking the entrance and the exit of the town. Moreover, since the afternoon of the 9th of August, the election day, there was on the street, on the main streets, there were many police forces lined up in different directions, try to reduce the number of people gathering. So sometimes you can see people walking in one direction. Some other times you can see people being stopped on the other direction, on the same street, exactly the same street. So they were trying already since the afternoon to reduce the crowded of the people. When the night passed, I was coming out from a dinner, and I started to see people very scary. I'm not talking about strikers. I'm talking about normal people coming out from a dinner that were really scary and waiting, looking around in many squares, in many areas of Minsk. So I asked them, what happened? A mother with a child told me, look, I'm very scary because I think they're going to arrest randomly people. You have to pay attention, you too. It doesn't matter if you're a striker, if you work, if you come out from a dinner. The police is going to arrest you randomly. And that's exactly what's happened to me. I was recording a few hours later, a lineup of police. They were exactly standing in a crossway. In front, there was a street, a main street, where before were passed a few strikers. And we can hear that there were other strikers approaching, but they were quite far away. So the police start to charge, not the strikers, they were quite far, but the people behind, people that were close to me and they were speaking English. So obviously there was a randomly strategy to arrest much more people possible. So I notified to the police officer that were charging that I was an Italian journalist. At the beginning, they left me and they say, okay, no problem. You have to stay on that street. As a journalist, it's not a problem. Yeah. 5 minutes later, another police forces line up, 15 men, completely masked and black suits. They just indicated me and say, okay, and they charge me. They arrest me. They beat me on the leg, on the knee, to put me on the knee, obviously. They destroy my working phone and say in a strong Russian accent English, no recording, obviously clear message. And then they temporarily blind me with a pepper spray. They handcuff me and they drag me inside a police truck. Then they brought me in a police detention facility. Until that moment, and in general, we didn't know. I didn't know in that moment why I was arrested. No notification, anything. They just brought us, international people, all together in a cage, and we were listening. A familiar sound in the next days, in the next night, actually, there was screaming. In this facility, the people were screaming as much as they can. And we were stuck in this cage. And they moved us in the morning when the screaming was over. And they brought us in a cell. In few hours, we raised the number of 19 people in a 4 meters cell without food for 60 hours. In the night, we were hearing people screaming and beating, and we can see from the hole of the door the violence of the police on the people. In the day, we get familiar with another sound, the sound of the mobile phone. That's a psychological strategy. I'm also an expert of psychology of terrorism and strategy of this kind of techniques. So they left all the mobile phone of the people in baggage outside the cell of the people. So you can still continue to hear all day long the sound of your family, friends try to call you, and you cannot answer because the mobile phone is outside your cell. And obviously they use also the deprivation of sleep. They didn't allow us to sleep. Well, there was no even space, but every 2 hours they were calling us out, or they were screaming to us, or they were beating on the door. One guy in the cell with me, an Ukrainian guy, they smashed the glass of the glasses in the eye, and he remained with the blood coming out of the eyes for 3 days. So this is the violence I was witness. And I'm a journalist focused on a conflict zone. I've been in many scenarios in the world, but definitely this is a kind of scenario is not supposed to happen in a broader country of Europe. And obviously this kind of repression is super brutal and violent, but I want to stress the concept that what's happened to me and other international people and journalists, it's just, it's for average European citizen is very brutal. But for Belarusian citizen, it's just the first level. The experience much worse. So this is a small contribution I want to bring to this discussion, and this is a real life experience of the reality we are talking about.
Thank you very much for sharing that story. That must have been quite an unpleasant experience. So next we have Anton. So I'm glad you made it. I haven't heard from you in a couple of days. I was worried that something happened to you. So how are you? Like, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, my name is Anton. I work for Belarusian Focus Information Office. I also collaborate with Press Club Belarus. It's a platform for the development of the Belarusian independent media. Yeah, I just got back from protests, so sorry I didn't make it on time. What do we do? I do a lot of stuff, really. It's mostly an NGO work, but for example, on the next week, we are preparing a press conference with Pavel Latushka, the member of the Belarusian Coordination Council. Yeah, I also edit weekly analytics, weekly Belarusian Focus analytics, both in English and in Russian. So please subscribe to www.belarusianfocus.info, www.belarusianfocus.pro. Sorry, I didn't actually listen to the start of the discussion, so I'm ready to maybe elaborate on certain points, but I need to know what they are before I do that. So I don't really have an introduction word, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Don't worry, Anton. Thank you for joining us. Even if you are late, you're more than welcome. So with your introduction, we are now over the round of introductions, and we are proceeding to the questions part. We are going to continue in the form of a discussion now. We have quite a lot of questions actually from our audience. I'm not going to pick anyone to answer the questions, so I will read it, and whoever feels like they have something to contribute with, please feel free to raise your hands and answer it. So the first question is, what is the overall atmosphere in Belarus? Are people starting to get tired of the manifestations?
I think I can answer this question right away. Well, I don't think that people are tired of the manifestations, really. They show up in big numbers, and today protest was, I think, about the same size that was on the last Sunday. Also, people organize in chats, and they do protests with their neighbors. They gather at certain points in their courtyards, and they also put white and red ribbons everywhere. But all of the above, however, doesn't mean that people don't get tired. They obviously do, because it's a very challenging period for people, even physically. Like today, we walked for more than 20 kilometers, actually. So just that actually is pretty tiring. And yeah, no, a lot of psychological pressure as well, because even when you gather with your neighbors, you can always expect some van with some masked people who will visit your courtyard, and then you should be prepared either to run or to defend yourself, or so it's also challenging, but I don't think that people who started to protest already more than a month ago, I don't think that they will give up because they're tired. Actually, they might have some rest, but afterwards they're still gonna protest on Sundays, and they're still gonna protest on weekdays as well. And also, I can say that, for example, regarding the women's protests, for the first time during the whole protest, the police started to arrest women this week on Wednesday. They started to arrest women on this women's march, and they probably expected that no women would gather for the traditional women's march on Saturday, but nevertheless there were about 10,000 women protesting, and yes, there were arrests, and there were some women who were arrested, but nevertheless it didn't stop women from gathering. So people are not getting tired to protest. They're just it's a challenging time, but I don't think they will stop anytime soon, actually.
Right, thank you very much for that elaboration. We got another question from Alan Paulin from our...
Sorry, I see Hannah and Ala would like to answer shortly, so maybe if we give them 1 minute each.
Yes, of course.
I would just like to briefly second point expressed by Anton, that I also see a lot of hope and determination, and I think we can expect the continuation of demonstrations, because I believe people are just really tired of this regime, and the regime has crossed this Rubicon, has crossed the red line with the repressions. People will never forgive and forget this.
And I just wanted to elaborate that mostly international community discuss developments in Minsk, but I want to highlight that the protest is active in all the country during all this 1 month and 1 week already. And it is spontaneous, it remains without a clear leader, and people are actually in a fighting mood. As Alla told before, it is a marathon, and people do understand that it is a marathon, and people are well prepared, which was surprisingly personally for me, because I did not expect that from Belarusians. And talking from the point of view, for example, of my friends that live in Belarus all their lives, they use the phrase "when we will win," not "if we will win," not "maybe we will win." They use the phrase "when we will win" because they cannot imagine not winning. And when I ask them, but what will you do if Lukashenko will stay? They say, well, in this very unlikely situation, we will go away from Belarus. So that, the stakes are very high for the regime, and what we are seeing today, also including, it is very symbolic. Okay, thanks.
Right, thank you very much. So if there aren't any other opinions on that question, I will move on to the next one, which is from Alan Pauli from our YouTube chat, and he's asking what we could do in order to support Belarusian protesters, and I think by we he means other Europeans, and us as well as a party or the European Union.
Yes, okay, I can take that. To start with the political parties or with the regular people?
With the regular people, I think was the question.
Okay, great. So the regular people actually can help us a lot. First of all, by reading and watching and disseminating information about what is going on in Belarus, because we encountered that during this 26 years, Lukashenko made Belarus almost not interesting to the world. Like, for instance, if something happens in North Korea, all the media are ready to give it the red light in the first front page. If something happens in Belarus, people are, whatever, Belarus. But we should fight this wall of not knowing by disseminating the information in the European languages, translating information in English to the other languages. For example, in Barcelona, many of my friends translate and use in Catalan, and of course they spread much bigger than just news in English. Then European citizens can make petitions to their governments, to the European Union organizations to find some ways to influence on them on the situation of in Belarus, because so far we saw that only governments of our neighbors, Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland, did actually announce something concrete on Belarusian situation. And we would like to have much more international and European attention to that, and ordinary and usual people can help us very much on that. Then helping Belarusian society, for example, people that were tortured, people that suffered, people that have death in their families. It is possible to donate money in the different funds. It is possible to support NGOs. And as I already mentioned, our neighbors, apart from the wars, they actually made some good projects for civil society, such as, for example, offering help for students that were kicked out from the universities because of their political position. Also, they made a simple relocation of Belarusian business, especially IT business, from Belarus to Lithuania at the time. And many other civil initiatives that actually simple and normal usual European citizen can be part of.
If I can add maybe a few suggestions on what the EU can do to help Belarus. Well, we all know that the European Union has promised to provide financial support to Belarus in the amount of 53 million euros. And we all know that the majority of this, the biggest part of this amount will go to fight coronavirus, which means that it will end up in the hands of the government. So I think it's very, very important that the EU should impose a strict control mechanism, that this money will be used according to the goal and will not be spent on, let's say, supporting the repressive apparatus and paying the salary of the riot police. I think this could be one measure that the EU could take. Another idea, which I think would help Belarus, is that the EU could initiate the process of establishing a special rapporteur on investigating the violence in Belarus, which happened in the aftermath of the elections. And I think the EU could somehow acknowledge the role of women, of our brave women, in bringing peace and democratic change in Belarus. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ala. If there is no one else wanting to contribute to this specific question, I would like to continue with a question from Dmitry Kunchenko, who is following us on YouTube, and his question is the following. In case of a success of the revolution, what can be done in order to prevent the Ukrainian scenario, aka invasion by Russia?
I would like to answer this question. Actually, I should change the word of the question, because in my opinion, for what I see, for my sources, and for whatever is the frame, that's not a revolution. I have been in a revolution in Syria, I have been in northern Syria, I've been in many other contexts, in Cuba and so on. This is not a revolution. This is a people movement. Obviously, can turn in some other point. But as many people has described very well, the opposition at the moment exists, but the people movement has no leader yet. So considering this point, I will not call this a revolution. Euromaidan scenario, Ukraine, we're talking about. I think it's a very different things at the situation like is now. I don't say that it can be like that or not, but the moment it's not like Euromaidan, it's not like Ukraine. Russian is not really interested in deployed army in Belarus, also because the people many times forget for example, Maria Kolesnikova, so one of the face of the, let's say, movement and the struggle, she's well connected with the Russian reality. It's not about European Union, US, and Russia. It's about the situation of Belarus. In my opinion, Belarusian citizens, they have to help themselves to find their way. So I really appreciate the word of Tikhanovskaya, Svetlana, when she said, it's not to be against Russia, it's not to be against United States, it's not to be against someone, it's to do something good for Belarusian, for democracy, and against the oppression of the situation that we experience. So with all my heart, I hope the situation is not gonna go on the path of Ukrainian reality. But at the moment, it's not the interest of US, European Union, and Russia to go on that path. Thank you.
Actually, if I can follow up on that, first of all, thank you, Claudio, and you have a very comprehensive understanding of the situation. So I'm quite impressed. And basically, the Ukrainian scenario is very, very different from what's happening in Belarus. And I'm surprised to see that even this comparison is still going on and on and on. Because if you look at the Ukraine, first of all, it's a multinational country, it's a multi-region country. Just looking at the geography and the composition of population in Ukraine and comparing that to Belarus would take away any possible, parallels between two scenarios, because what happened in Ukraine was completely different. And the reason the conflict happened in Ukraine and Russian troops were deployed was completely different. We were all quite scared that Putin will invade Belarus even in the beginning of August, straight after the elections. But it looks like it's not going to be a possible scenario. This is not the biggest threat that we are facing. And please, by all means, feel free to correct me. I like panelists, feel free to challenge my view. But I think the biggest threat, if this people's movement wins, will be dealing with all the people who are at the moment on the government side. That's a huge society problem that we are creating at the moment. But I don't think Belarusians at the moment should be worried about Russia invading them if they win. If Lukashenko stays in power, that is a more probable scenario, because between jail and being, a governor of Belarusian region of Russia, the second scenario is probably more appealing to him. Thank you.
If I can just briefly add on this subject. Well, I think military invasion is not in Russia's interests at all now. And there are three main reasons for that. First, it would incur certain financial expenditures for Russia. Second, reputational costs. And third, it can just turn a certain portion of Belarusian population, which have a favorable opinion of Russia, away from it. And so I think that this option is not on the table at all. What Putin will try to do, though, is to realize the so-called soft occupation of Belarus via deeper integration. And I think this is what will be discussed during this upcoming meeting on Monday. I think that it's very important for our audience to understand that Belarus has a huge economic dependence on Russia, and this makes it very vulnerable. So Russia's leverage over our country is very, very high. And basically, Russia has just other means to control the situation on the ground rather than to use military invasion. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that. If there are no...
Can I just quickly follow up, if you don't mind? It would be actually quite interesting to discuss what European Union is planning to do in case there is soft or hard Russian invasion.
Yes, please.
All right.
Yeah, I would like to add that I think that from the rational perspective, Russia doesn't need to use military force in Belarus to preserve its own interests. But also Russia is not known for particularly for making rational decisions. So we don't know. I think that would be the question, but I would actually like to point out that question as well. I would really wonder what would European Union and NATO do in case there is a military occupation of Belarus. That's a really interesting question. I mean, I would suggest that most probably if there is like a hard military intervention of Belarus now from the Russia's perspective, I think there would be with that kind of movement that is taking place now in Belarus, I think they would have all chances to get a partisan war from very otherwise friendly people. So yeah, that's it.
I'm frankly much more interested. Oh, sorry. I'm much more frankly interested to know how this soft scenario can be realized, and potentially if there is a referendum on this union state of Russia and Belarus, on close integration within the union state, how would Belarusians vote? This, I think, would be sort of a more interesting question to raise. And I think it's difficult to give an answer to this question at the moment.
In my opinion, in both the scenario, the military one and the more realistic soft situation, it's the real question is what's the European Union? I mean, you see many other scenario that's a different country of European Union actually act separately. We can see Libya, France, and Italy are on the opposite side. We can see in Ukraine actually, where there is, just theoretically a common position, but actually everyone decided for himself. So the real question is really doesn't matter what the European Union really want about this situation, or maybe it's matter more that European Union finally reach a point and show their support against the oppression that's happening in Belarus, but at the same time, it try to make, let's say, let the people of Belarus decide for what they want, and based on also in relation with Russian, obviously, in both the scenario. So my concern is not about what is going to happen with the European Union and Russia, but it's really European Union is going to do something.
Okay, would anyone like to respond to that? Okay, if not, then I will go on to the next question, which is related to that, almost directly from Christian Bangdal on YouTube as well, and he's asking like how long would the Belarusian protesters keep going in a situation like this until it might even turn to a point where the protests turn violent, that the protests might even turn into a civil war. Like, would it be possible that Russian protesters or just the people would turn to arms and actually try to confront the government and the police on a violent level?
I can say that this already happened up to a certain point because the protests 9th of August, 10th of August, 11th of August, and 12th of August, they were not only peaceful, and well, I would say peaceful protesters started to use force as a response to the actions of the police against them. So this already happened, and I think that the Belarusian society has shown that it's not ready to use violence proactively, but at the same time, if attacked violently and out of proportion, it will answer. I don't think. I mean, the Belarusian protests are now very peaceful. All the protest organizers and all the vast majority of protesters themselves advocate for a peaceful protest. At the same time, I don't think that a civil war is possible because I think that the regime is vastly outnumbered. Lukashenko doesn't really have any base that he can use in order to make them fight for himself in a potential civil war. And I don't think that he even has that many policemen who are fiercely loyal to him. For example, in the last week in the protest, we saw that the head of the Gubopik, which is a department on the fight against the organized crime, the head of Gubopik smashed the window in one of the Minsk cafes. So this is quite a high position in Lukashenko's police and in Lukashenko's system of power. And if these people themselves have to resort to using to smashing windows in cafes, that doesn't mean that probably doesn't. That probably means that they don't have too many fighters who are willing to fight for them. We don't know about, say, the opinion of the Belarusian army, but most probably it's very divided as well. We have some clues about the opinions in the Belarusian army, for example. Again, during the first 3 days of protests, people as Okrestina jail and Zhodina jail were full. People were transferred to this semi-prison built and guarded by the Belarusian army in Slutsk. And the prisoners who were there in Slutsk, they actually said that it was they had a very warm welcome from them, from those Belarusian military members who were serving there as guards. They were feeding them well. When they saw that they were beaten, they got rid of all the batons that they had, and generally they were very welcome. So the army guarded them, but at the same time they kind of make them understand that they are on their side, sort of. And in such a manner, I don't think that civil war is possible because there wouldn't be too many fighters on the other side, in my opinion.
I can maybe also chime in on this one. So just from the vibes that I mean, I'm personally getting on the protests, they are still like, if the police will not cross this line again, if they will behave more or less in the same kind of on the same level as they are behaving now. I don't think it will come to force from Belarus people. So yeah, I mean, I actually agree with Anton that it's highly unlikely that that there will be a boiling point on the side of the Belarusian society, which will be reached soon. And also, I also think there are just like not many people on the side of the government who can actually fight for the regime, because even now, when there is protests, like when there is like a really large rally, like it was today, they don't have the resources to stop it. Like they tried to stop the protest in the beginning, when it was sort of building up small groups of people coming from the districts. This is where they tried to make some arrests and try to split the groups, but they didn't have enough people, so basically they failed. And then so basically it resulted in those small groups merging into like a really big rally. And against those kind of numbers, they really have, like, they can do nothing. I mean, they can only use the brutal force, weapons, tanks, but I don't think they are that desperate. So yeah.
I want to add that I wouldn't mess with tanks if I were them, because we're not sure where these tanks are going to shoot if they have the order. This is, I think, This is, I think, an important thing. I mean, we don't know a lot about the Belarusian army, but I don't think there will be a lot of people who would be willing to shoot their own citizens, to be honest. And one more thing, yeah, we can. Yeah, I totally agree with Nick that this seems to be their tactics on Sunday. They attack small groups of people who gather before the protests, and they also attack small groups of people who go after the protest. For example, I just came from Pushkinskaya metro station, where I had to run for a little bit because all of a sudden police vans came, and the masked men started to kind of go hunt for people in that region of Minsk. But that's the only thing they can do. They can do nothing against 100,000 people which are coming on the streets every Sunday.
Thank you, Anton, and we also hope that it's not gonna turn into something violent, and we wish you good luck. Nick, you may want to add something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just like a funny thing I have seen today to show how desperate they are and how powerless they are against the huge crowds. We have a museum of World War II, and basically, so the march was going past this museum, and then it was turning left. So, and then I think there were like very few army men guarding this museum, and they had no better option but to put on the music. Like they put on this really, like I don't know how to frame this kind of music, but like a very, very bad taste in pop music. And this was their reaction. So like they're desperate. They cannot stop the march. They cannot stop the rally, but they can put on this music on our way to the final destination of the rally. So it was bad to hear the music, but it was good sign to me.
You can dance at least, show them that, like, even if they put some bad music.
Yeah, it's undanceable, this kind of music.
Great. Okay. So we have a very connected question from Isaac, one of our viewers on YouTube again. So he's asking, how likely is that the Belarusian people succeed in overthrowing the government, and what are the biggest obstacles you are facing and you have to overcome in order to succeed?
I can start, but I'm going to provide my own view. So basically right now, and please feel free to comment, everyone else. So basically the way I see the situation right now, it's in impasse because the government clearly realizes that the moment they start using violence again, this is going to be the end of it. And the protesters don't have a proper, well-defined leader. This is, people's uprising against the illegitimate government. And basically, it's the situation where government in power cannot use the force. Protesters cannot use weapons because it's a peaceful protest because they don't have any weapons. And basically, the situation can change. The most realistic scenario if government workers and security forces, including the army, finally take the protesters' side. When and how that is going to happen, I don't know, but I think that's the most realistic and the most peaceful development of the situation. And by all means, please feel free to challenge me.
I would like to challenge you, Svetlana. I probably just add one point on this issue. I think the answer to the question how long this whole battle will last and what shapes it can take can actually depend on one variable, and that's money. Yeah, that's the financial support. We shouldn't forget that this is a very costly undertaking to suppress all these demonstrations, to pay salaries to riot police, to keep the army on the western border. So again, Russia here is a kingmaker, basically. If Russia provides financial support on time to Lukashenko, that means we probably might witness this whole scene developing for longer time. But if it doesn't come, then probably it will end sooner. So I think this is one of the key variables in this equation, money.
Anna, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to develop this last thought. I completely agree, and I just wanted to talk about Russia because obviously, as we already talked here, the strict vertical of power and the military support are what keeps Lukashenko in his place now, and Russia as well. But in Belarusian crisis, Russia has a unique position because neither Lukashenko nor his opponents nor the protesters have anti-Russian sentiments. Unlike in Ukraine, for example, nobody expresses anti-Russian sentiments. So that instead of, for example, finance Lukashenko's war with his own nation further, Russia can choose the rational approach. And for now, for example, as I see it, of course it supports Lukashenko, but it not in all its might. It also looks at other candidates. It awaits of what will happen, and it depends. I guess it depends on Russia, on Putin's decision. If Putin in one moment will decide to support, for instance, Tikhanovskaya or whosoever, the battle will be over. The Lukashenko will be gone. It is my opinion. Of course, everyone is welcome to challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that Russia is more inclined to indeed support a scenario of transition of power via these constitutional reforms, so that to ensure that Lukashenko goes away and he will be safe, but probably a new person comes who will be loyal to Russia and who will kind of continue the course of Lukashenko, but definitely without these repressions. But let's wait and see. Yeah, let's wait and see. We will already know more details next week after this meeting, I'm sure.
I'm sorry, just one very small remark on that. We talked about Belarus and Ukrainian scenario, but also I think we should discuss a bit Belarus and Armenian scenario. in this. And as I see it, the European Union's attitude, in which I am would be very happy to elaborate, shows that European Union can actually make a negotiation with Russia as it was with Armenia. But on the one hand, as in Armenia, Putin did not support ex-Armenian President Serge Sargsyan, and now it is not supporting Lukashenko as well as he could. But on the other hand, as I think that we can see that Russia is calculating its approach, and it does not give a green light to the Armenian scenario in Belarus. However, for us, it might be the most peaceful and one of the best, I guess, scenarios possible. Thank you.
All right, adding to this, we have a question from Vita Kobiela, and which is, what do you think about Lukashenko's new project for overcoming the current crisis, including new constitutional amendments and long-term presidential elections in 2022? Are people going to support it, in your opinion?
Can I answer it? This is
Yes,
all
go ahead.
a complete waste of time, and we shouldn't really trust the person who lies several times a day. So really, change of constitution, okay. Referendum, yeah, okay. But will we have the same Central Election Committee that we had just a month ago? Will we have the same local election committees? Will we have the same rules on the observers? So it's just, I don't think anybody buys it, really. I mean, that's good that he's talking about this. He's acknowledging the problem, but we shouldn't buy into this constitutional reform or the elections after it. No, you should go away now. That's what we want.
Anna, please go next.
Yes, I would like to say that I don't think that he is acknowledging the problem by making some promises of the amendments to the constitution. He's just blurring the aim of the protesters who want him gone immediately and to organize the new fair elections. The idea of amendments appeared even before the presidential elections, but now it's clear that it's aimed to manipulate society so that society will not radicalize more and think, oh, okay, we can wait more peaceful and legal, civilized changes, and nobody believes in it anymore. After tortures, after the death, after what our nation has been through past month, Lukashenko has lost his legitimacy. Thus, he is not credible anymore as a leader. Nobody believes him. And also, of course, they talks about amendments and new presidential elections in 2 years. It is about extending his power for minimum 2 years. And again, like Anton said, who would be in charge of counting votes? Who would be organizing all this? I mean, it does not have any. The Lukashenko and his institutions do not have any legitimacy among Belarusian people now. So even though it sounds like a first democratic steps of the authoritarian leader, they are not, and nobody believes in his pro-democratic ideas after his police tortured people. So it is like a fairy tale, and I do not think that anyone would believe that he would really, if he would stay, he would organize a good, fair voting and implement these amendments. And actually, talking about the what the amendments are about. He promised the liberalization of the political system, transfer the powers from the president to the parliament, and increase the role of parties. So all the good fairy tales that, I mean, does not mean anything in concrete, but he did not say anything about the foreign policy. What he will include in foreign policy in these amendments. And some experts, I think that if he would manage to stay in power, the amendments would contain some norms about the deepening integration with Russia. Thank you.
All right, our next question is a business-related question, and it is what the businesses right now in Belarus are doing. Are they taking a side with the protesters or with the regime? Or like for example, if you take a look at China, like businesses do not have a choice, like they have to side with the regime all the time, or they will be shut down. Like, is this the case in Belarus as well? Or is there also capital flight
I would like
expected?
to start with answer. If someone else, Nick?
Yeah, I think Nick was first.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be quick. So basically, if we talk about the private companies, I can speak from on behalf of most of IT companies, because this is the community where I belong, and I think that most of IT companies are basically siding with the protesters and with the solidarity, like they show the solidarity to everything that is going on. Hence, we see a lot of projects, a lot of volunteering initiatives. A lot of actually people from other companies are protesting. We all heard what happened to PandaDoc last week, where 4 people were taken hostage by Lukashenko and his government. But still, so this is one side of things in IT industry, and then another side is that we still, like, companies still have to operate somehow, and this is where every company, like every employee, has a choice. Like, either we sort of stay and try to change things, or we leave. And I think that many companies are sort of in the air, and I think like having their moment to see where it goes. Also trying to support, trying to help, but mentally we have a plan B of relocating the businesses, especially, well, our businesses, IT businesses, are quite easy to relocate. So that's where we stand.
Right, Claudio, would you still like to add to that?
It's actually connect with what Nick said. I was in Kiev last week, and I meet 3 Belarusian employees of, I guess, was PandaDoc, was the IT company, and they literally, how to say, kind of refugees, self-refugees of themselves in Ukraine. That's quite interesting, because Ukraine is a country half in a war, and they feel safer in Ukraine than in Belarus. And so I asked them, what do you expect for the future? I mean, you are now here, you are scary that you're going to be arrested. Actually, because this employee, they just left Belarus for the situation that Nick was mentioned. So it's quite impressive. You start to see people leave the country with no expectation to come back at the moment, considering the repression also on the company is happening. So I meet them in Kiev, so in Ukraine, and they are not the only one who are thinking about that. I want to just add one thing about the previous question that we were talking about coronavirus. I forget to tell you, considering what Lukashenko said, that coronavirus practically doesn't exist. It's just easy I'm 32 years old. I in good athletics condition, and I got coronavirus in the jail of Belarus. So I spent the first 2 weeks in treatment in Italy with high fever. Lung condition was completely, I don't know how to describe in English this, but the pain was very high, and I still need 3 months to fully recover my full ability of use my lungs, and I'm 32 athletically prepared. So imagine what's happened with grandfather and other people. So yes, they should take more seriously the coronavirus point and use the money were mentioned before the European Union gave to them to use in that direction, to that goal. Just a small anecdote.
Can I add regarding the coronavirus? What we saw is that we actually finally we've been able to see this spike in deaths, COVID-related deaths, when Belarus submitted its mortality rate to the United Nations, and we've seen a huge spike in deaths there. So I don't remember the exact numbers, unfortunately, but Belarus approach of COVID-19 led to a spike in deaths in the country, and the country didn't do too well with COVID-19 and doesn't do so. And I really sorry to hear that Claudio caught COVID-19 in Minsk. It's very unfortunate. Sad.
Okay, thank you for the answers, and sorry to hear, Claudio, that you got COVID-19 in Belarus, and glad to see that you recovered. And let's go on with the next question from Maurizio, which is the following. If Lukashenko ends up leaving power, do you predict that the transition to fully democratic system will be smooth, or there is a risk of Belarus turning into some sort of a non-democratic regime, as we saw in the Arab Spring? So what are your predictions? No one is.
I can add on this. Personally, I think that Belarus is going to be a democratic country, as this 26 years of dictatorship that we have for now, they're a good injection against authoritarianism in future. That's what I think. I mean, yeah, that's my opinion.
I've been in the second part of the Arab Spring in Egypt, and I think the comparison it doesn't match with a possible scenario of Belarus. The condition of the Arabic regime are really specific, really it's completely different culture also beside that. So I don't think we can take a comparison with the Arab so-called spring that, as we see, they really wasn't a real spring actually.
If I may add to that, I don't think transition is going to be smooth. No matter how much, as a Belarusian, I would love to agree with Anton. I just can't see it happening. First of all, because of the problem I already mentioned, that all the people that are currently on government side, I mean, they are Belarusian citizens and they live in Belarus and they are not going anywhere. And somehow we will have to accommodate them and reintegrate them into society. I mean, we cannot jail everyone, right? And it's probably going to be a situation similar after the Second World War, where people who collaborated with the Nazi forces had to be reintegrated into society eventually, maybe not to the same scale, but nevertheless. And also because Lukashenko's government actually provided so-called stability and social support over the 26 years. And because once the protests win, the economy is going to suffer. I mean, the economy is going to suffer anyway, but if Lukashenko stays in power, you know, like people know whom to blame. But the moment new government enters, all the economic problems would be blamed on them. And people would say, yeah, okay, you know, and I expect the sentiment of nostalgia actually coming back quite quickly for the same, you know, the same way it happened in Russia, you know, with the post-Soviet Union nostalgia and so on. And also looking at what's happening in new members of European Union, looking at the conservative governments or like right-wing governments winning in Hungary, Poland, you know, and probably there are others I'm just not aware of. I don't believe, as much as I want to believe that transition is going to be smooth, I don't believe it's going to be, but either I'm quite cautiously optimistic that the elections will be democratic going forward. There would be probably some manipulations, you know, and some, you know, some old, you know, Soviet school, you know, attempts to hold to power, but I don't think anyone will stay in power for the next 26 years.
Hannah, please go ahead.
Yes, well, I think that of course we can do not much but speculate on this matter. But I would argue with the question, the transition to the full democracy or to the authoritarian regime again. Like in Belarus, we cannot just jump and transition to full democracy. As Svetlana noticed, even in the European Union, we have the countries which are not fully democratic, right? And for example, in Belarus, we are now fighting for basic democratic rights. But for example, when the representatives such groups as the LGBT or the feminists takes part in the actions of protests, some people express their bad attitude because Belarus is quite conservative country. It is post-Soviet country yet, and the fact that Belarusians want its its self-proclaimed president gone, it doesn't mean that they are fully democratic and progressive in their heads. And I agree also that the transition period will not be smooth. Of course, it can never be smooth, but Belarusians actually are not preoccupied by it. The two ideas of Lukashenko's gone and new fair elections is the one that's holding society together and that actually maybe built Belarusian society almost from zero. And that is what is impressive. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to add to this question? If not, then I'd like to connect to what Svetlana said. Like we have some problems in the Central European area, even within the European Union. I think it's still like, I like to call it as a post-socialist syndrome, because we still have the majorities of our societies who grown up under socialist regime, and I see it affecting our like state of democracy and civil society even today. And like just a small addition to the question, like what do you think, what role the civil society will play in this change if happens, and like how strong is the civil society currently in your country?
Anita, if I can just, if I just make a little remark on that. I mean, you can put some emphasis on post-Soviet society because Soviet Union wasn't a democratic system. But I don't think it's a Soviet problem, because you can look at the UK, you can look at Boris Johnson, and you can look at Donald Trump. And those societies, they are not fully democratic. They're like cradles of democracy. But nevertheless, those people are liars, but they are in power. I mean, I'm not going to elaborate on the subject, but I'm just saying, like you can't really say that, democratic transition is not going smooth because of post-Soviet problems. I mean, just our part of the world happen to have the heritage of such system, but it's a problem of fundamental human nature and of politics on how people vote and what they vote for. And human nature is universally the same everywhere. Just in some parts of the world, people are so accustomed to the citizen rights being respected that politicians cannot manipulate them anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be the goal to reach even in our region, I believe. Okay, so let's move to the next question then. I don't see who asked it, so I'm just going to read the question. Does the Coordination Council has a strategy for how they are going to manage the future relations with Russia and with the European Union? Go ahead.
I will take that because actually the Coordination Council is quite an important topic. Coordination Council was formed by Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who was sent out from Belarus with a clear aim to negotiate with the self-proclaimed authorities the democratic changes, including change of power. And as we can see that for now, from the Presidium of the Coordination Council, only one person is free. It is a Nobel laureate, Svetlana Alexievich, and she is being protected by more than 10 European ambassadors, who is almost living in her flat, I think, at that point right now. Others have been detained. Of course, the legendary story of Maria Kolesnikova destroying her passport in the border, or others were made to flee from Belarus. But the Coordination Council was formed primarily from the quite famous people, intelligent and respected. And it is a unique precedent in Belarus, because we should understand that even though the opposition force, we had some, and we do have some opposition forces, some parties, but they never came into the organized structure like that. And in this Coordination Council, we can see a lot of politicians, a lot of people that actually do represent Belarusians. And after such, well, and all they wanted in the beginning was negotiation, as I already told. And Lukashenko, of course, did not go to that negotiation, because doing that is to legitimize that they are actually providing so that they have some political weight and they're representing some Belarusian people. So instead of that, he imprisoned or threw out from the country this member of the Presidium. However, the members were legally prepared to this. And now the decisions will be made in the among the other structure inside the council, which consists of 70 people. And I mean, it is a logic in the survival. So it is a survival logic. They do not have answering to the question, as Tikhanovskaya and Kolesnikova and all other members of the Coordination Council said, they do not have any anti-Russian sentiments. Svetlana Alexievich also expressed several times that Russian intelligence should react more actively to the Belarusian crisis. But they do not have a long-term foreign policy objects, because the Presidium are arrested or out of the country. I mean, they are barely surviving as an institution, as an organization. And however, as I see it, it is very important to keep this organization alive. Because for now it's the only organized institution that represents Belarusians, and we can expect that that in the future maybe Lukashenko will go to the negotiations, because Putin mentioned already 2 or 3 times, according to my count, that that the negotiations should take place. But now, again, looking at the measures, at the steps that are going on, the Coordination Council is rather aims to survive than survive today and tomorrow. It lives by one day, and it does not have this big and ambitious plans that the question was about. Thank you.
I would still like to add to this question and would like to ask what political spectrum the opposition actually represents apart from fair elections and anti-government stances. Like, would you say like the opposition is rather left or right or center or just a mix of everything? Yes, Hannah.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just already mentioned it in the introduction. I just want to answer this question that opposition in Belarus is not typical as Europeans see it, and it is not left or right or centrist. It is impossible for now to put anything on the political spectrum. For now, it's just the protesters movement. But the opposition is not like it is not. It cannot be categorized as in Europe people used to. As I already said many times, opposition has just two aims, and they are not related with any ideology or with any side of the spectrum.
All right, then let me go to the next question, which is from Jennifer Beer. And that is, what are the demographics of the protesters? And I would also like to add to that, like, what are the demographics of the people that support the current government, and what is the ratio of the population according to your opinion?
I can just maybe talk to like personal feelings that I get when I'm out on the street.
Yes.
Well, it definitely feels that younger people are more active and they basically take participation in every kind of rallies. But also, like, for example, what I noticed today is that there are a lot of people who are, I would say, 45 plus, who are really upper class in terms of the income, because I've seen some group of people who I already know, and I know they have their own businesses, companies, etc. And so from my point, it's pretty I would say well diversified across the age groups. What I didn't see were many like old people, like, I don't know, 70 years old, 80 years old, but still there were a couple of grandmas. And whenever there is like a grandma or a grandpa coming to the protest and cheering, the crowds are especially loud for them, because I don't know, it just feels that like we need more support from this group, because I think that they are the last ones who really support the current president.
All right, thank you very much. And yeah, we are already out of time. Are there any of you who would like to make some closing remarks to this discussion? Like some last comments, something you would like to have the audience in mind?
What is the message you are sending us from Belarus, those who are protesting or are close to the protests?
Well, I cannot talk for everyone. I just want to send a message that that I wanted to do throughout all this time, is that the actions that European Union has done so far in in relation to the Belarusian crisis are not enough. So far it has been only judgmental statements, and the sanctions list of 40 people, even not including Lukashenko, because Germany, France, and Italy wanted him to be opened for to keep the channel for communication open. And even these 40 names could not be blacklisted because of the EU internal problems. Cyprus blocked the revolution because Cyprus thinks that the sanctions against Turkey should go first and sanctions against Belarus. And I will not talk about what it means for the EU foreign policy. I'm not such a big expert on this. I just want to say that many people in Belarus are very upset by the EU reaction, and what is possible to do for the Europe, what Belarusians expect to do at least bare minimum, is that the sanction list should be much bigger and include not only politicians and elite, Lukashenko's elite, but every policeman and every propagandist that is responsible for the death, for the tortures, and for the other violations of human rights. And also, apart from that, apart from the blacklisting, their money in the EU accounts can be freezed, for example, and so on and so forth. And also, I already talked a bit about the humanitarian initiatives employed by our neighbors, Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland. So that I think that the European Union could help Belarus in this as well by not taking a decisive stand now, as the European Union demonstrates that it recognizes that Belarus is a special interest country for Russia. It is very unfortunate to see that, because we are fighting for basic democratic principles that the European Union countries already have a long time, and I think that Belarusians deserve it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some other closing remarks from anyone else?
I would say it's a great momentum for the European Union to build some trust with Belarusian people, because eventually, I mean, we'll probably not become a member of European Union in the foreseeable future, but we are a country with great economic potential, highly educated, more than 50% of economy as services, and booming IT outsourcing industry, and actually having a positive sentiment from European Union among Belarusian people would benefit EU as well. And right now what we see, again, is opposite to Baltic states and Ukraine, or maybe Poland back in the day, so Czech Republic. Belarusian people don't have that much trust in European Union because of the state propaganda and because of the lack of actions on European Union side. So if there are ways to build and develop the trust, it would benefit European Union in the future.
Thank you, Svetlana. We hear your call, and I think that in Volt, as young and future leaders of Europe, hopefully we hear it, and we'll try to address it as much as possible. Okay, then if there are no further,
I would like to add
okay.
one remark. Please no more statements of grave concern, because this is I mean, the European Union can release the same statements, but just please just put pressure on your politicians to reformulate them, because it's made fun of already. Like the European Union is greatly concerned about, you know, the detention of all the Belarusians. So please just kind of reformulate this if you can. This goes to the politicians in the European Union.
I can hear that pressure. By the way, if you follow European Solidarity, the big group, where many vote members, they organized protests at Belarusian embassies, trying to put pressure on our own leaders in many European cities. So it comes from the younger European generations. Okay. Jan, maybe? Ala, I see you.
Yeah, just a small comment, concluding remark from my side. I really hope that positive changes will come to Belarus soon, and the new leader will be able to develop mutually beneficial relations with the EU. And thank you already for this existing support, what you have done, and we hope the EU will be able to do more for us. And thank you personally, Volt Europa, for providing this platform. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having participated. Okay, I see no one else is raising hands, so thank you again. On our side, I can say a huge thank you in all of our members' name, and as a colleague of Volt Academy, I'd like to invite you, maybe in a month or 2 months' time, whenever we have something, some developments to discuss about, to reconvene and rediscuss the situation in Belarus in a very similar format. And please do keep us updated.
Yeah, I would also like to thank all of you for participating today, and we would like to wish you all the best for the days and weeks to come, and we really hope that your hardships and your situation will turn out to be beneficial for all of you.
Never give up on democracy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.